Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome to the spring 2018 meeting of the Stony Brook Council. Stony Brook University Council, thank you. Let's start like we always do with the Pledge of Allegiance. Karen's going to lead us in.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's move around the horn to acknowledge a quorum of the council. Kevin Law, Chairman of the Council.
Linda Arman,
Alexander Carlutzis.
Frank Trotta.
Karen Wishneal,
Ed Feldman.
Christopher Hahn.
Jim Morgan.
All right, so I'll recognize a quorum, and let's go through Sam's team. It's always great that they're here, and we appreciate it. And we'll start with our
Michael
provost.
Bernstein, Provost. Good morning.
Judy Grimer, Chief Deputy for the President and Senior Vice President for Government Community Relations.
Matt Whalen, Vice President, Strategic Initiatives.
Hi, I'm Rick Gatto, Interim VP Student Affairs and Dean of Students.
Nicholas Cabetta, Vice President, Marketing Communications, Chief Communications Officer.
Richard Reeder, Vice President for Research.
Ernest Baptiste, CEO of Stony Brook University Hospital.
Good morning, Fred Skanga, Executive Director of the Long Island State Veterans Home at Stony Brook University.
Susan Blum, Chief Counsel for the University.
Heather Lynch, Ecology and Evolution Department.
Dexter Bailey, University Advancement and Stony Brook Foundation.
AJ Nagaraj, Assistant Vice President for Campaign Operations and Fundraising Strategy.
John Keegan, Gilbane Development Company, a grateful visitor this morning. Thanks for having me.
Adam Furtman, Director of University Community Standards.
Marjorie Leonard, Office of Institutional Diversity and Equity.
Kevin Moriarty, Chapter President for Stony Brook University UUP.
Marissa Trachtenberg, Associate Director of Policy, Compliance, and Presidential Initiatives.
Susan Hines, Executive Assistant to the Vice President for Strategic Initiatives. Carol Lundborough, Executive Assistant to the President.
Well, welcome, and thank you all for being here. We'll get right to the agenda. First item is the approval of the minutes from both the December 18, 2017 and the February 12, 2018 minutes. Motion by Linda, seconded by Chris. Any comments, revisions, additions? There was one, I saw one, Susan, one typo. Bob Megna's name was spelled wrong on the December 2017 minutes on the second page, and since these minutes always get sent up to SUNY, I figured we'd correct it. So pick that up. Anybody else?
Kevin, I wasn't here on February, so I December.
Abstain on that one, but all in favor of the December 2017 minutes? Aye?
Aye.
And then for the 2018 minutes, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and Jim will abstain. Okay, so the minutes are approved. Chairman's report, I don't have much of a report other than just disillusionment and can't believe it. Our Stony Brook women's lacrosse team, the best team in the country, and I read they got a number 5 seed.
Yeah, I saw that.
Is this fake news?
Yeah.
What can this be? The number 1 team in the country, and somehow we got a number 5 seed.
Well, BC is number 4. And they only lost in
well,
the
that's the
ACC, which is a real conference. No.
James.
So it really is disappointing. It's related, as Jim implied, to the strength of the conference record. So when they're trying to put together seeding, they look at the strength of the non-conference record and the strength of the conference record. And Stony Brook's conference, the America East, while it has a couple of decent teams, is not a power conference. And so therefore, what you get in terms of their consideration for your record within conference was not particularly helpful for us. Even though we were undefeated in our conference, it was not helpful. I think we had hoped that having had the strongest out-of-conference schedule in the country, we had the strongest out-of-conference schedule in the country, and undefeated in that country, would be enough to sway to at least a 4 seed. I think didn't happen. And what's disappointing is if you're not in the top 4, then you won't host a game. It's possible you won't host a game on the way to the Final 4, which will be held in Stony Brook. So in other words, if you're a top 4 seed, and then you're going to play at home basically for any game the way the 4-team bracket is based. So it's very disappointing to end up as number 5. And I think again, a misjudging of the quality of the team and the kind of victories it's had all season. I mean, there haven't really been a lot of close games for this team.
Well, hopefully it'll motivate them even more than they already
I hope so.
are,
I hope so.
and go straight on.
Yeah.
Pretty exciting.
This Memorial Day weekend will be the Final Four, and by expectations, we will make the Final Four, proving them wrong in their seeding.
And it'll be at Stony
it'll be here
Brook.
at
That's
Stony Brook.
exciting.
Yeah, it'll be at Stony Brook.
The first round, I think, is also here Friday night, if I read Newsday correctly.
So as a 5 seed, you'll certainly host the first game.
Right.
Whether you'll host the next game, I think, will depend on who wins on these other things. So it's
Right.
possible you might have to go to another place for the second game.
Oh, well, it's still an amazing season. We should all be so
Yeah.
proud. And hopefully, the fall meeting will recognize them with the
National
appropriate
champion,
recognition, when they come. That's it, Sam. Why don't you give your president's report?
Sure. So we have a really full agenda today, so I'm going to be pretty short. So first of all, I wanted to call attention, and I don't know if we've talked about it here before, but we had a great recruitment for Dean of our School of Marine and Atmospheric Science, and Paul Shepson has been named the new Dean. Paul comes to us from Purdue University, where he's currently a distinguished professor of chemistry and of Earth, atmospheric, and planetary science. And his research, which is extraordinarily timely, focuses on issues related to the exchange of gases between the Earth's surface and the atmosphere in various settings, ranging from Arctic and coastal marine environments to forest and urban environments. And he's very interested in issues related to global warming. He's the author of more than 215 scientific publications, a fellow of the American Geophysical Union, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and he really is a very distinguished researcher who also has been at the National Science Foundation as well and serves as an officer at the National Science Foundation. So he understands funding agencies very well as well. So he'll be starting July 2nd, but we're very excited about his arrival. He's already been present on campus. He came for our Earthstock celebration, so he's already making an impact and contributing even before his official start. We're excited about it. Michael, anything to add?
You hit it.
Okay, thank you.
Very
So-
excited.
Sam,
Well,
and he's a SUNY graduate.
Yes, that's
Cortland.
right. Cortland, and the provost did, was responsible for the recruitment. So let's thank Michael. So the other thing I just wanted to catch up on very quickly was the campaign for Stony Brook, because we're about to reach a milestone for that campaign. And Dexter, do you mind just telling everybody where we are? I didn't tell Dexter he was going to be talking, but where we are
Yeah.
progress-wise. So.
Yeah, so I'll be doing a presentation.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's save it. Let's save it for that. Let's save it for that. So then, commitments to free speech on campus. One of the major topics of discussion at the Association of American Universities AAU meeting was the concept of free speech on campus, and that's something as a public university, of course, that Stony Brook is completely committed to. And we released a statement that's available online at our website and also at the AAU site, where all the members of the AAU again expressed their commitment on the protection of free speech on campus, a fundamental tenet and right that should be defended on all universities. And of course, we want to do it, of course, in a way that continues to promote an inclusive and non-discriminatory learning environment and take all steps that are necessary. But again, those can't stand in the way of free speech. I had a chance to participate, and we received an award from NAFSA, which is the Association for International Educators. Every year they give an award for outstanding performance of the school in the area of international education. And Stony Brook University was one of 5 recipients this year of the NAFSA award in 2018. And June Loon, who's our Dean for International Affairs and Associate Provost, led that application. We're really proud that really it acknowledges the outstanding and exciting work that's going on at Stony Brook University in this area. We have more than 5,000 international students on campus at Stony Brook right now, so they're a very important part of our population, both in the graduate school and in the undergraduate population. And it really points to the fact that we're working to be a global university, both in terms of the students who come to our campus and the students we send to other campuses around the world, our Madagascar site, our Kenyan site, our site in Florence as well. So really it's part of our globalization for the university, but we're very proud to receive this award. And we'll be featured in Washington, D.C. They'll do a live presentation of the award in Washington, D.C. that will be streamed, and I'll have a chance to take place and participate during that award ceremony. Ken's not here today, but there's something exciting that the School of Medicine has done. They've launched a 3-year MD program. So this is, just as the name suggests, an opportunity for students to receive their MD in 3 years instead of the traditional 4 years. It's a very limited number of students who will be participating in this. It's a very intense program, as you might imagine. You have to really take advantage of summers and other times off to complete in time. But it is, will help, of course, decrease student debt and tuition costs for the students who participate, taking a year out essentially of costs for these students. So it's a pilot we're starting. It's been successful at other institutions. And one of the things we did was we guaranteed a residency program for any graduate of the program. Because these kinds of three-year programs are new, there's a concern that residency programs around the country might have some prejudice against someone who trained in 3 years rather than 4 years. So because of that, we've guaranteed the graduates from this program that they will have a residency opportunity available at Stony Brook. So we're really excited about it, and we'll see what kind of enrollment we get. But as I said, I think it'll be very competitive because of the cost savings essentially associated with completing in 3 years.
They take the same amount of courses, it's just accelerated?
I think basically it's accelerated, and I think they kind of have a little change in their schedule in terms of when they have more clinical opportunities as well. I think there's an acceleration of that process too. But I wish Ken was here to give more of the details on how it's actually implemented. But as I say, it's exciting. I wanted to mention one of our star faculty, and that is Esther Takeuchi. Esther's been, I think, may have presented before to this body, but I wanted to let you know she's been named a finalist for the European Inventor Award. So this is a major award sponsored by the European Union that provides an award to someone who's viewed as a global innovator and contributor. And she has been nominated for her numerous efforts in storage technology. The announcement will take place in Paris. I think the official ceremony will be in July in Paris. And Esther is amazing, and I would not be shocked if she wins the award of the European Inventor of the Year, which again would be highly prestigious.
Oh, that'd be great.
Let's see if there's anything else I wanted to cover. I think the stars of Stony Brook Gala. Dexter, I'm going to let you summarize that.
Thank you. So it was another wonderful event, and really appreciate everybody's support. The highlights were, from a fundraising standpoint, over $1.5 million for student financial aid, and then Dorothy Lichtenstein, our honoree, who was also honored with Gary Trudeau, the founder of Doonesbury, and Jane Pauley from CBS Sunday Morning. But Dorothy also announced a $5 million commitment to support the ongoing programs in graduate creative writing, film, and fine arts at the Southampton campus. So that was really terrific, and it was a fun evening. So thanks everybody for all your support.
And that Southampton campus, continues to thrive. So this investment is going to, again, really help the programs out there. Progress is taking place towards the hospital siting out there. Ernest, do you want to comment on that at all?
Sure. There's fundraising will be starting with engage two companies, one for strategic planning. They'll be out there helping us from looking at the plans in regards to how the hospital should look, the size of the hospital. So that plan, the companies have identified and selected, so we're going to be moving forward from a strategic planning standpoint. Also, project managers have been identified to help us move the project forward. So a lot going on. We'll be engaging the committee. That will be fundraising to raise the funds for the hospital. I think working with the state to acquire the land that's out there on the campus. So a lot going on. I think it's moving forward. The next step is really continue to work with the community out there and the committee to get the hospital off the ground. So we're excited about that happening.
So it's estimated there's going to be a significant fundraising activity that will take place. That will be done by Southampton Hospital. So Southampton Hospital has retained its board essentially to help them do the fundraising for this project. But we anticipate they've already started. I think they have already identified a number of prospects and prospective. I think they're very excited about what's going to happen out there. But they're already beginning the planning, and we, again, as Ernest said, there'll be a legislative component potentially in terms of the ground lease required for the hospital. So, but again, we're really excited about it.
Cool. Anybody have any questions for Sam?
No, that was it.
Great, thank you, Sam. Let the minutes reflect that we've been joined by Council Member Michael Smith. And now let's go to the reports. We have 3 different reports today. The first one is on the super colony, the Adelaide penguin discovery. And Dr. Heather Lynch will be making a presentation. We're happy to have you.
Oh, thank you so much for the invitation. I really appreciate it. It's a really nice opportunity to tell you guys a little bit about what it is that we do and what we'd like to do So I'm a joint faculty member in the Department of Ecology and Evolution and the Institute for Advanced Computational Science. And the goal of my research is to apply all of these different areas of ecology and applied statistics and conservation, all to understanding the functioning of Antarctica and to help in its protection. So obviously I can't cover an entire research program in about 10 or 12 minutes, but I wanted to give you a sense of what our overall research goals are. Otherwise, some of the other stuff I'm talking about will be a little bit out of context. But the main research goals are to understand the distribution and abundance of Antarctic wildlife, and to understand how the Southern Ocean as an ecosystem functions, understanding the food web and how it might be impacted by climate change. And the conservation aims are here to make sure that Antarctic management proceeds with what we call the best available science. And so we do science that we think directly impacts policy, and as you'll see, I think we've been quite successful. But at heart, I'm sort of a methods geek, and so a lot of what we do is really pushing the envelope for methodological and technical innovation. So we're talking about using remote sensing and statistical modeling, machine learning, all of the tools that we might apply to the Antarctic, and I'll describe just a couple of those today. It's worth noting that we spend about 5 months a year in the Antarctic as a group. Not only the students that are in my lab, but also students from the School of Marine Sciences that aren't part of my lab. And so the work that we do is a real opportunity for scientists, or for students to become world-class field biologists. And we do work off of small research yachts, NSF research vessels, and also commercial cruise ships. And in fact, a lot of what we do is based off commercial cruise ships. So I just want to give you, an overview of one project that's gotten quite a bit of attention lately, because it is quite exciting. And this was a big project that we had funded by NASA to use satellites to identify penguin and seabird colonies in the Antarctic. And we don't see individual penguins. What we see is the guano or the excrement that's left behind by these penguin colonies. And so we can actually do an entire pan-Antarctic survey for all the penguin and seabird colonies in Antarctica. And those little yellow pixels there are all the pixels that our algorithm has identified as being penguin guano. And so we can take the area of the penguin guano and work back to how many penguins must have been nesting in that area. In doing so, we did a number of pan-Antarctic surveys. We discovered some real biological hotspots that weren't known to science before. And in particular, a group of islands called the Danger Islands that through our discovery, and as I'll describe in a second, our ground expedition, we discovered contain more penguins than the entire rest of the Antarctic Peninsula combined. About 1.5 million penguins in the Danger Islands that were most of whom were not known. And we've also discovered a major Antarctic petrel colony at Mount Biscoe. So all told, just by the Landsat satellite program, which is NASA's satellite, over 1 million penguins have been discovered just in the last couple of years. Now, this discovery and our subsequent field expedition to the Danger Islands got a huge amount of attention, and you guys may have seen it in the news recently. So over 300 national and international outlets covered it. In the first 10 days after our story was released, the media department estimated $5.8 million of free advertising for Stony Brook University. That does not include the New York Times Sunday edition and the Wall Street Journal. So those got to be worth something, I'm sure. Just to give you a sense for really how much impact this had and the kind of reach that this work has, I just want to play you a short clip here from Seth Meyers' late night monologue.
Scientists have discovered a new super colony of penguins after their manure was spotted from space.
Said the penguins, "Thanks a lot, Carl."
Carl. The penguin is
So as a scientist, the idea that your research would end up on the late night monologue is about as far into bothering as you can expect to get. But it just highlights how exciting this new discovery was. So as excited as we were that at least somebody on Seth Meyers' team read the paper, what we really want is for people that are working in Antarctic management to read the paper. And so here you can see before we discovered the Danger Islands population, those blue shaded areas were considered high priorities for a marine protected area that would keep that area free from krill fishing. After our discovery, the international body that negotiates these agreements actually expanded the marine protected area proposal to include the Danger Islands. And so it immediately had an impact on sort of the conservation strategy of this region, which is almost unheard of. Because these agreements are so difficult to negotiate. So that's very exciting. About 2 million hectares added to the proposal for the marine protected area. And finally, we do a tremendous amount of ground validation. So we went and we were able to fund an expedition to the Danger Islands to verify some of our findings here. And I'll just talk over this particular video. This drone video gives you a sense of the scale of the populations that we discovered. This is just one of the Danger Islands here. As we pan over, you can see it's just penguins as far as the eye can see. And again, this was a population that was not on any maps. No one knew it existed. And that's one of the things that satellites provides us is literally a bird's eye view of the Antarctic. So we don't have to know that something's there in order to discover it. So there were 3 Stony Brook students on this expedition. A 4th member of this expedition has joined as a graduate student subsequent to this expedition. So a really exciting finding, and this was a video that was picked up by the BBC. So just to give you a sense of just one of the things that we do where we're combining technical innovation and ecological research is that we use a computer vision technique called structure for motion, where we can build centimeter scale resolution 3-dimensional models of these islands. And we can study how the water flows from these islands as the snow melts, and we can understand why penguins are nesting in some areas rather than other areas. So there are these bio-geomorphological interactions that really combine geosciences and hydrology and ecology and computer science. From that, this is from that drone footage, we can create these centimeter scale resolution maps. And in fact, we have 3D movies where you can fly over the Danger Islands in 3 dimensions and sort of study the interactions between the terrain and the penguins. One of the other areas that we're working in is building convolutional neural networks. So everyone hears about machine learning or artificial intelligence. So this is in collaboration with Dimitri Samaras in the computer science department. How do we train computers to do the work that traditionally we've done manually? How do we get the computers to identify penguin colonies in satellite imagery? We want to build these computational pipelines to do it automatically. And finally, we want to be able to build statistical models. Can we understand how the populations have changed over the past, and can we make good forecasts into the future? I'll say that in terms of understanding the past, we're doing quite a good job. In terms of making good predictions about the future, not so much. So one of my goals next year on my sabbatical is to embed myself in the quantitative finance program here in the applied math department and see what tools can I bring from quantitative finance to the world of quantitative ecology. So just to give you a sense of what kind of resources are required for a research program like this, these are all the awards that I've received just in the last 7 years since I've been here. It's exceptionally expensive work, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of interest in the kind of work that we do combining technology and ecology. I'll just highlight a brand new award. It's about $1.8 million across 5 institutions that I'm leading here at Stony Brook, and that is to build cyber infrastructure to connect satellite imagery and high-performance computing and machine learning so that we can build the infrastructure that other research groups can use to basically follow in our footsteps. So I'm very excited about this new project. And again, this work of combining high-performance computing with satellite imagery really leverages my joint appointment with the Institute for Advanced Computational Science, and we're heavily using Seawolf and some of the other computational resources that we have on campus. So I'll just close out by giving a sense of how much interest there has been in this work in the media, including a 2-page spread in National Geographic Kids here on the upper left. This is the New York Times article here on the far left. I picked up a book in the bookstore the other day, not one that I was involved with, and it says here, penguin poop in parts of Antarctica can be seen from space, and that has entered the public consciousness as an amazing animal fact. We had a segment on Sunday night with Megyn Kelly. We had NBC and Harry Smith in the field with us for 3 weeks, a season and a half ago, and then just a small number of the outlets that have covered our work recently. And finally, I just want to say that this is a real opportunity for students at Stony Brook. I have 9 PhD students in my lab, all of whom are getting their PhD on Antarctic ecology. But in addition, we've had up to 15 undergraduates working in the lab in any one semester. These are just a couple of the students that have gone on to present their work at the Eureka Fair, as well as local high school students. And so it's a real opportunity for students to get their hands deep into research. I'm really excited about how we've been able to use the great students that we do have on campus. And with that, I'll just say thank you, and I'm happy to take
Heather, and again, again, my ignorance on it will come as I ask this question, and with no disrespect, and keeping with the Alan Alda theme of
Yes.
making science simple,
Yes.
why should folks here on Long Island care about penguins in Antarctica? Like, what does it tell us about
Right.
the rest of the world?
It's a good question, and I'll say I won't convince anyone that they should care about penguins, but they should care about the oceans. And so the penguins really are the one window we have into how the Southern Ocean functions. We like to think about 7 oceans, but really we have 1 ocean. And it just so happens that penguins are the thing that we can study in the Antarctic because the oceans are themselves so difficult to study. And the krill and the fish on which the whole Southern Ocean depends is in fact incredibly difficult to study. So penguins really are the thing that we're studying because we're really interested in something else, which is a function of the oceans. And so that's something that we should all be quite concerned with.
Great, thank you, that was helpful.
Great answer, yeah.
Anybody else?
Other questions?
Do you think that those penguins just went to that island recently, or have they always been there?
We think that they've always been there. So one of the collaborators on this project was a paleoecologist from Louisiana State, and so we took cores of these samples, and we can use radiocarbon dating to figure out the date of first occupation. So we know for some of these islands they've been there at least 300 to 400 years.
Oh, wow.
Subsequent to this work, we've discovered that one of the secrets to the Danger Islands is that it's in a rain shadow. And so precipitation is one of the things we know very little about in the Antarctic, but you can kind of imagine the Antarctic Peninsula forms this big rain shadow, and that's probably why these islands are successful now, probably have been for a long time.
Just a comment, you've made Stony Brook proud, congratulations.
Oh, thank you, I appreciate that.
Thanks, Ed, well said. And when you guys are down there with the students, where are you all staying? Are you staying on the boats, or you pitching tents on the ice, or?
So we have had projects in the past where we would pitch tents and we would be there in tents for months at a time. At the moment, all of our work is off cruise ships or yachts. So we're basically staying on the boat and working off the boats for about 5 months a year.
Got it.
Yeah.
Exciting.
So it's a great science and multidisciplinary, so really crosses a number of borders, which I think is departmental and school borders, which is fantastic. And I think, again, captured the public's imagination in an extraordinary way. This is one of the most impactful stories that we've had in Stony Brook in a number of years. So it's because it's great work. So Heather, congratulations.
Thank you.
Again. Great stuff.
Thank you, Heather.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is now Dexter. We're going to hear.
Yeah. I'd like to enter the official record to the chairman that I never get to follow Heather again. Yeah, even though I'm talking about money, that was really great. So I'm going to do a little overview of the campaign for Stony Brook, and I appreciate the opportunity to give an update. And as Sam said earlier, we're getting ready between now and June 30th to reach a milestone, not only for Stony Brook, but for SUNY. And before I get started, there are a lot of unsung heroes, so a lot of times I'm the one that gets the pats on the back or the accolades, but I have a terrific team behind me. AJ's here today, but I have a great group of people that work tirelessly on behalf of Stony Brook, and then the people that are sitting on the outskirts of the room have also engaged with me, sometimes directly or indirectly in fundraising. And of course, President Stanley's commitment to the work that we've been doing has been unparalleled in my career. I've been doing this for 25 years. And to have somebody who's that committed. We're on the road all the time. We were just joking. I was just in Sarasota visiting with a donor with Esther Takeuchi, and last time we were there, we had a fantastic meeting with the Knapp family, and then we had an alumni event that we planned. And just to give you an insight into some of the highs and the lows of our experiences, so we had 15 people that RSVP'd, and 1 person showed up. And so here I am with my president in Sarasota, this amazing location, and that's the work that we've been doing all around the country and all around the world. So thanks, Sam, for your patience and for your support. So I'll try to go through this relatively quickly, and each slide there will be a little point of information. But what I want to get across to everybody is, yes, we're getting ready to have this successful campaign, but there's still a lot of work to be done, and I want to give you a sense of the level of maturity of our program and the work we still have going ahead. So we started the campaign in July 1st of 2011, and at that time we thought that after doing a feasibility study, we thought that $500 million was our target. We were able to be very, very aspirational and move that up to $600 million thanks to the leadership gift we received from Jim and Marilyn Simons that Sam worked on for about 1.5 years before I got to Stony Brook, and then I was fortunate enough to be here to close it. And so you can see the progression here. One of the important points is the timeline. So we're about 95.2% through the campaign timeline right now, but our fundraising progresses if you track it day by day, month by month. We're at 97%. So we're still tracking ahead of where we need to be, and that's been a constant in our campaign, once again, because of the healthy start we had because of Chip and Maryland. If you look at who's participated, one of the major challenges that I walked into and was happy to accept was really to get our alums to participate at a more aggressive level in their charitable support of their alma mater. So far there's about 46,700 people who participated in the campaign. 16,873 are graduates of the institution. So we feel that we've made some good progress there. There's still a lot to go. We have 180,000 living alums. Of the 180,000 living alums around the world, we probably can contact about 90 to 100,000 of them. So as you all know, that's a work in progress. People are moving, things fall off. So we're really proud of that. But you also notice that friends and parents of the institution have been extremely healthy, and that's been the hallmark of Stony Brook's fundraising for decades. People who have adopted the institution and share in our mission that have stepped in and said, I really want to support this. So it manifests itself in a lot of scholarships and research support, but it also manifests itself in, for example, the Wong Center across the street. If we look at where the money's gone, at a 100-foot level, we've had tremendous support. Heather just commented on it, for research support and our faculty on our academic enterprise. That's where our donors have been most inspired to support us. So out of the $582 million that's been raised, almost $200 million has gone to research. And then another $200 million has gone into the academic enterprise. So that's everything from Robert Harrison's program in high performance computing to the Laufer Center for Computational Biology, but also Hellenic Studies, the history department, the art department, Southampton. So we've really had a rich and supportive engagement amongst our donors. And when we say research, it's not just in the STEM area. As Sam always says, we've raised about $42 million for student financial aid. We would like that number to be more. I think we'd love that to be $142 million. So we're still working on that, and we'll continue to make progress there. When we started the campaign, I won't get into a lot of detail, but essentially all the units on the campus, we work with them, we sit down, and we spent months and months to try to identify what their priorities are, and then set a fundraising target for each department over the course of 7 years. So this is a list that you probably can't read, but what it is it tracks each department that's participating in the campaign. It's not holistic. There may be other smaller units that just didn't make the list. And then we track how they performed over the last 7 years. And I'm just going to read the top columns for you so you understand what counts in the campaign. So of course, cash, gifts in kind. We count gifts in kind that are independently appraised and are budget relieving. So one of the departments that, on campus that does a very good job of this is, for example, dental medicine. So they have a relationship with Henry Schein. Henry Schein will donate equipment and medical support for them. It's budget relieving, so that will count in the campaign. We also have things that we count in the bequest intentions. The national accounting standards are extremely generous, so the organization that kind of sets the national accounting standards is CASE. And what they say about bequest intentions is essentially you can take a verbal, you can just take any confirmation from the donor. We have a much higher standard. We have to actually get documentation. So we've probably given up some performance in that category because we're a young program. We want to make sure that we can actually document effectively bequest intentions. So we're growing in that area as well. And then just quickly, sponsorship. So you'll notice there's $4 million in the sponsorship column. The reason why that's there is that when we did the Island Federal Credit Union commitment, that essentially came in as philanthropy. So even though they did the sponsorship, they didn't need to renovate the building. They didn't need to help us clean the floor. So that money is going to help the athletic department move forward and make investments that are important to how they move forward. So just to give you a sense there. And then just a little shout out really quickly. The departments that are on track to make their goals: Arts and Sciences, School of Marine and Atmospheric Sciences, the Stoller Center, the School of Medicine, actually Stony Brook Medicine in total, and then the Veterans Home. So let's, this is where AJ's been doing a little bit of work for us. So Just a couple highlights. Gifts have come from donors in all 50 states and 55 countries, which I think is pretty interesting. If you look at, there's 635 events that we've done in the last 6.5 years, 9,015 prospective donor phone meetings, and then 11,000, about 12,000 actually face-to-face meetings that we've had during the course of this time. One of the interesting things here, if you think about the 204,000 gifts that have come in as part of this campaign, the mean is 5,300, which is actually pretty high. So we have a campaign that performs very well at the top of the pyramid, but if you look at the median of 100, so 23,000 people gave $100 or less. So, that's kind of a little bit like Bernie Sanders and the Obama campaign, but now what we need to do is to move those people up during the course of their lifespan with us, their life engagement with us, and move them up the ladder. And then we wanted to give you a little sense as to what was going on with where the donations are coming from, so I'll go through this quickly. This is out of the 47,000. You'll see, obviously, no surprise, New Yorkers are 73% of that participation rate, but you can kind of see where we spend this is also a map of where we spend a lot of our time with donors around the country. I was just in Sarasota yesterday, as I mentioned, California, Virginia, etc. If we look at our little area, so Suffolk County is 43% of that 47,000, New York 11% of that 47,000, and Nassau County 11%. I do want to talk about this, because I know this has been an issue. So what does Renaissance employees and Renaissance families mean to us? Well, to put it really clearly, out of the 580 million, 378 million have come from Renaissance families. That has supported what I mentioned before, scholarships, research, academic centers, athletics, Dollar Center, and I wanted to kind of put it a little bit in perspective for everybody. So 81 families have participated in this campaign. 37 have made gifts of $100,000 and above, and you can see it's 65% of our overall performance.
So we should be 65 or 55?
Yeah.
Yeah, 55. So AJ, you're fired.
Where is I thought we had a Department of Math here.
I caught it.
Sorry about that. And then I don't expect you to read this. What you need to understand here is that this is what we call the gift range chart. So when you start the campaign, you also do an analysis of your database, and then you compare it to industry standards. So there's a ratio in the industry about 1 donation for every 4 attempts, and then you build a chart like this. Red numbers means that's where you have a deficit. So we work every day to try to fill in these blanks. So even though we're making our goal, you can see that the distribution of our giving, we have huge gaps in the category of 50 million to 100 million. 10 million and 5 million, but we've done very, very well at the $1 million and below level, and then of course with Jim and Marilyn giving us that really great start. So I don't need you to digest this except to know that the work that we do, we're always trying to fill these identified prospects, and then our ratio is about 4 intimate engagements to close a major gift, and we're going to define a major gift of $100,000 and above. So that's the churn, that's the grind of the work that we do. To give you a little closer view of it, when we did we do public records research, and we identified 20,000 prospects so we're in our database, whether they had strong relationships with us or cold relationships with us. So out of this list, for people that were in our database, maybe somebody was wealthy and they made a charitable gift for a memorial, or maybe they impulsively wrote a check to Dollar Center, but they were in our database. When we did that scrub, we identified 20,700 that we thought had ratings based on public records of the capacity to give $50,000 or more over a period of 5 years. And then you can see how the work happens. So out of the 20,000, we did our reviews of the individuals and kind of threw away the ones that didn't look like they had any real engagement with Stony Brook. We identified 7,900 that were assigned to development officers. And then they hit the phones, and they hit LinkedIn, and they hit relationships, and they try to get as many meetings as they can. 5,400 were contacted by the phone, and then we were able to get meetings with 4,575 of those individuals. We were able then to move them to a point where they invited us to submit a proposal. So 537, actually, we did submit proposals, and 306 of those were funded. So I wanted to give you a sense of the work and why this team is so important for Stony Brook, and maybe make a pitch for growth at some point. So this is just another way of looking at it. The blue line are the prospects visited. So you can see in 2011, we saw probably about 1,300 prospects during the course of a year. Now we're able to see almost 2,500 prospects, and these are individuals that are rated at $25,000 and above. So as we're able to, the orange line, increase the number of fundraisers, we're obviously clearly able to get out and see more people, and that's really the name of the game. The uncomfortable truth about my work is it's person to person, individual to individual. So as of this morning, we're at $589 million. I have, as we said at the gala, high confidence that we're going to make the goal. And I would like to see us blow by the $600 million goal. But there are a few things that have to fall in our favor in the work that my team and Sam and I are doing between now and the end of the year. I also wanted to give you just a little bit of a perspective as to what's been going on in Stony Brook since 1998. And each bar represents overall comprehensive fundraising achievement. So you see between 98 and 2002, pretty modest. Then we had the great, the last campaign between 2003, 2009. You can notice I refer to this a little bit like an EKG. A few startling moments. So that's the Wong Center, which was $52 million. The Simon Center, which is $62 million. So you can see that. And then hopefully what you see here is if you did a regression line, a little bit more of a consistent growth pattern. So yes, we had the great bump with Jim and Marilyn in the beginning, but what we're trying to do is to build a program that eventually could generate $100 million a year. That would get us to the midway point compared to our AAU peers that on average do $250, $260 million a year. So we're just trying to, take that big step up. Then we'll plateau after this campaign, try to have that runway, and then we'll get ready hopefully for our first $1 billion campaign. So that's it.
Okay.
Any questions?
Great job, Dexter. Thank you. Hey, Dexter, I saw SUNY Buffalo last week announced a $650 million campaign. Something tells me that's not a coincidence.
That is not a coincidence.
They wanted to top us. They wanted to top us.
I believe so. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And in fairness, I would do the same.
Right. And out of our $600 million, what percent is restricted? I mean, do most donors say, okay, here's $1 million, but it has to go to the nursing program? Or
Yes. Yeah. So out of the $580 million, so within an academic year, we only raise about $400,000 to $500,000 of what we call pure unrestricted funds. And typically those go at the end of the year right into scholarships or whatever institutional priority there may be, whether it's recruiting a faculty member. So the high, I would say in the low 90 percentile is going to be restricted. And there's different levels of restriction. I want to be really transparent and say there are funds, for example, for the Veterans Home, let's say, where I'm a donor and I give it to the Veterans Home. It's at Fred's discretion how he spends it, but it's restricted to that. So we can't just take it and redistribute it someplace else. But it's a couple $100,000 a year is pure unrestricted.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jim.
The 30% alumni, how does that compare to other four-year public institutions and other four-year private institutions?
So in general, our participation rate's about 9.2%, and that, when you look at all publics, that's decent. When you look at the publics that we aspire to be like, those institutions will do 14 to 18% of their participation, and some schools will do higher than that. And those schools tend to have strong athletic programs, so people are making donations for the transactional opportunity to have seating priorities.
Right.
So in Ohio State, maybe close to 19%. If you go to privates, then you're talking very significant numbers. The good privates are in the high 70s, high 60s on a regular clip. So we're not embarrassing anymore per se, but we still aspire to get up into that 14-15% range on each year. Yes.
Just point of information, the 65% was correct based on your numbers. The 45% was wrong.
No. Okay.
So 65.
So 65, 35.
Thank you.
That's
significant.
significant.
Yeah.
Good catch, Kevin.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Dexter and
Great,
team.
thank you.
Very good. All right. I'm sorry? So our next, we have an interesting presentation that I think either Sam or Judy's going to tee up. Or, no?
I will. So, I think how long ago? A year and a half ago? year and a half ago, I think we put forward a request for information and asked developers essentially to respond to this request on how Stony Brook might improve our housing access, essentially. It was really focused primarily on housing. And the issue was housing for graduate students, housing for medical residents, undergraduate housing potentially as well, and perhaps even housing for young faculty. All of these are challenges, as you know, on Long Island. And we'd come to realize that our conventional way of financing through DASNY, the Dormitory Authority of the State of New York, was not allowing us to build in a reasonable manner at a reasonable cost. And so the question was, how could we partner with a private corporation and companies to actually create a public-private partnership that would allow us to build at a more affordable rate and increase access essentially for housing on the campus. And so we had a great response to this. We ended up identifying a firm, Gilbane, where we've developed an MOU for them to further explore the possibilities. So there's no final contract yet, but we're in the periods of discussion now. But we thought it was important to present to the council and get the council's input on our planning in this area. And again, the idea is to really find a way to improve access to housing on our campus, but perhaps provide access to retail and other components as well as part of this development. So we're just going to give you an update essentially on where we stand on this. And John Keegan, who's the vice president for Gilbane, will be giving this presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Stanley. Thanks for everybody for having me this morning. I'd particularly like to thank Judy and Matt and Dexter for the level of support and commitment and accessibility that they've provided us throughout this process over the past month and a half as we've been going through this early stages, Dr. Stanley, that you referred to. So thank you for that. Again, my name is John Keegan, Vice President, Gilbane Development Company. Pleased to speak with you this morning, a brief update about the campus village that's proposed here on campus. I will say, listening to the presentations and the discussions here at the council, I couldn't be more impressed by the energy and the trajectory of Stony Brook University. It really is striking. My exposure to Stony Brook is more recent than yours, but it's been intense over the past several months actually, and I've been very impressed. So congratulations to everybody for making the university what it is and what it will be yet to become. As Dr. Stanley mentioned, just a quick background. So in the fall of 16, University issued our request for qualifications to development teams to look at comprehensive development services, casting a very broad net to design, build, finance, operate, and maintain assets, multi-phase development on university land, ground lease to the developer. It's contemplated a dynamic campus village concept, residential, retail, academic support, student services, dining, parking, recreation, over again, several phases. Through last year, responses were received, shortlists created, interviews conducted, and we're very grateful in February to have been retained by the university for this feasibility stage as a precursor to a full launch of a public-private partnership. We commenced our efforts in March, and we're right in the middle of those efforts right now, culminating taking place over the course of 120 days, at the end of which we'll circle back to the university, present our findings. It's a feasibility analysis, if you will, for the proposed campus village. For those of you who may not be familiar with public-private partnerships, really what it is, it's a platform, it's a process, it's not a project, it's a tool. It's scalable, it is flexible, and really what it does is it's where the public sector can engage the private sector expertise, leverage its resources and experience to outsource key risks in delivering needed facilities. Those facilities are typically auxiliary facilities, meaning they typically have a revenue stream attached to it that lend themselves to being financed in a non-traditional means and realized in a more expeditious manner. A little bit about Gilbane. We're a 145-year-old firm, headquartered nationally in Provincetown, Rhode Island, one of the nation's largest developers and builders. Higher education is a lot of what we do, including development both on and off campus, most of which is mixed use of the type contemplated here. At the top, I've identified our primary team members whom we're grateful to have on this team. I will say in particular, Provident, they are our 501c3 nonprofit partner We thought the benefit in higher education of bringing on a 501c3 partner onto the team provides additional flexibility and mission alignment in terms of how those assets are delivered and operated long term. The university, in its RFQ, had identified several goals: support the growing population, which we know is real, bring in private sector innovation, deliver a dynamic campus village, create a living learning environment, leverage the existing infrastructure, maximize and utilize existing open space, provide best value, both near-term and long-term. Public-private partnerships are looking at the life cycle of an asset or composition of assets, not just the initial delivery. This is something that was important to me as we were preparing for our thinking toward this campus village. I took the opportunity to listen to Dr. Stanley's State of the University address last year and just look for themes in that address that apply to the built environment. They apply to all aspects of Stony Brook University, but they really are striking as well for the built environment: sustainability, efficiency, technology, innovation, diversity, discovery, advancement, community. Each and every one of those items manifests itself in a campus village environment in which your students, faculty, staff, and community partakes. So as we looked at our analysis for the campus village, we looked at setting the stage, and this is academic year 17-18 figures. We looked at the current enrollment, the current housing, the estimated housing needs as expressed by the university and being validated by our efforts here through this early feasibility study. There's a need for 1,000 to 1,500 additional beds for students, undergraduate, graduate, professional, and also visiting faculty. So when we took that body of needs and took just our initial thinking as to how that would translate into the built environment in a campus village, it roughly translates into a multi-phase program of roughly 750,000 square feet of habitable building area, developed in multiple phases. Dining, student lounge, about 150,000 square feet of ground floor space. Again, this is over the full build-out. I think it's safe to say the full build-out of the campus village is many years, up to a decade. It's not a 2-year program. About 550,000 square feet of residential above those active ground floor uses. And then ultimately a parking structure. This campus village is contemplated to be located between the arena and the LIRR train station on that axis right now that is presently a pedestrian path that links the two. When you look at, right now there's parking in that area. Ultimately, as this development builds out, that parking will need to be consolidated and replaced in a parking structure, so there will become a tipping point through build out where there will be a parking structure as part of the development as well. We're looking at this in phases. Our most acute focus right now is phase 1, which is currently considered as mixed-use residential and retail for serving graduate and professional students and visiting faculty, 550 beds, maybe, likely more, but also perhaps expanded to meet the need for undergraduate housing demand. Undergraduates really I'll just say as an aside, really wasn't part of the charge, if you will, in looking at this public-private partnership from the outset. But as we're meeting with university staff and being benefiting from the terrific information and data that we're able to get, it's clear that the need for undergraduate housing exists as well. So I think the effort is how do you co-locate those two student populations in a meaningful and effective way. They each have distinctly different types of needs for the housing in which they reside. But you want to co-locate those spaces those uses in a community that makes sense.
Hey, John,
Yes.
just while you're on that slide, the 750, is that total, and then it's the breakdown after that, 50, 150, 550, or is it
Roughly.
750 plus 750?
No, I'm sorry, good point, yes, broken down as 750, 50, 150, 550.
Got it. And then when you talk about beds, on Long Island, we typically talk about units as opposed to beds. And so
Yes.
have you equated what 550 beds equals in terms of apartment units, or?
So that's a very good point. It's interesting. So when you look at, say, market rate multifamily housing, it's always in terms of units, not beds. Student housing tends to be in terms of beds because it's the heads on the beds that you're looking to accommodate. That 550 beds would roughly be for the graduate housing, faculty housing. Those are largely studios, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. So that's about 440 units. 400 to 440 units. Of course, undergraduate housing, you'd have more students per unit. So if and as we find this bed count's justified to be higher, that unit count, while increasing, it will increase at a slightly less steep rate if it accommodates the undergraduates. So we look at the campus village and contemplate its location. Oh, I'm sorry, did you have a question?
Yes, going back to the parking item. Parking is a mandatory negotiating unit item within UUP's contract, and we're all interested in moving in a direction that will help that. But if you're going to remove parking, how are we going to replace that parking for a paid parking lot? How are we replacing that? I'm not aware of any discussions with UUP on a parking matter yet. Will that be discussed with UUP?
Well, we're all just hearing about this for the first time, so
Okay.
I'm sure you'll be included as the stakeholders down the road.
Absolutely. What we would contemplate is that there would be, right now what we're looking at is parking as an inventory, and we're saying, okay, as we displace parking, we recognize there needs to be a net zero loss of parking through the delivery, and then ultimately a net gain of parking as the demand for that parking increases. Right now what we're working on is quantifying those figures, and then absolutely reaching out with the appropriate stakeholders as pertains to the implementation. Thank you. So as we look at the location of the campus village, again, contemplated to be on the axis connecting the arena to the LIR station. What's compelling about this location are several factors. You've got this confluence of pedestrian flow coming behind the student center, between Laval Stadium and the recreation center, toward what we're calling a town square. The movement along Toll Drive, the movement coming from south to north from the Simon Center into this nexus, and then of course from the LIR station coming into the campus. This town square, as we're calling it right now, Seawolf Square, it really is the intersection of these paths of travel. What's compelling is by creating a campus village in this environment, it meets several different needs. Obviously, first and foremost is the need for additional housing. But through the retail and mixed use component, what it provides as well is a sense of place. A sense of place that has an accretive effect on events that take place at the university, at the stadium, or on the campus. If they're drawing the community to this to an event, a lecture, a sporting event, what have you, a show, wouldn't it be great if there's a place where you could gather before or after a cup of coffee, a bite to eat, as part of that campus village? I think it is a powerful adjacency. Dark. Yeah. And this is the village in the fall. This is like
Is the battery going low on the computer?
Oh, you're going to hit your monitor. Just toggle it.
It's coming.
There you go.
Refreshing a little bit. We're back in May. So, so we look at this axis as the promenade, as the main street, not a vehicular main street, but a pedestrian main street that links the campus to the station, that is lined with these active ground floor uses, retail, student services, uses of that nature, and then with this town square at the center that connects them all. A conceptual master plan for this village, you'll see we're contemplating a town square right at the intersection. Now, to the point about parking, right now, that's the parking for right in front of the arena. We recognize that part of implementing this will be a plan for replicating that, replacing that parking, likely on an interim basis, but obviously a no less convenient basis, before that parking is aggregated in a parking structure. The reason why the parking structure is not done at the outset is because typically in a mixed-use development like this, particularly a multi-phased one, there needs to be a little bit of momentum, a little bit of scale to create those economies that help bring on those supplemental assets that are important, but are not the core uses of the campus village. So you'll see we come along, we interface with the town and the residential uses on the upper floors and the retail commercial uses on the ground floors. One thing we look at as well, beginning with the end in mind and casting as wide a net as possible over the realm of what's possible, we're looking at saying, okay, if the campus village reaches this contemplated full build out, but there really is a need for additional space, one logical expansion point could be to the north, which would require a potential track and field location. We're not presupposing that will take place, but I think it's important from a master planning standpoint to say, what if? And what if that were to happen, and could that field translate to the east to allow expansion? Possible, certainly something we're keeping in mind, just as a possibility down the road. So in a public-private partnership, I won't go through the individual details, but I think it's important to know that really what it involves, it starts at the earliest planning, where we are now, goes through the design, the development, the financing, the construction, into the operations and maintenance of the asset. At each stage, early on, we're engaging stakeholders. With Judy's help, we've been doing that already and will continue to do so, elicit that feedback so that we're not presenting a baked cake. We're presenting something that is, at each point in time we're making presentations, it's an appropriate time to get feedback to help shape the outcomes. So what are we doing right now in our pre-development planning? Several steps. We're thinking broadly. We are refining our conceptual master plan. We're evaluating the demand for housing. We've gotten a tremendous raw data from Matt and his staff that really has helped us quantify in a much more concrete way not only where the university is now, but where it's projected to be enrollment-wise over the coming years, so we can help right-size the demand for the campus village. We are aligning the retail recommendations with the university's needs and the market demand, not looking to cannibalize retail in the community, but looking to provide complementary retail offerings that really align with what the stakeholders on this campus are seeking, and perhaps also into the future, the community as well. We're confirming the program for the initial phases. We're identifying the potential impacts from and to the existing infrastructure. We know there are limitations on the sanitary sewer capacity, that in addition to parking considerations, transportation considerations, those are all things we're taking into account right now. We're establishing and firming our conduit for the transaction structure, i.e. ground lease or other transactional arrangement. We'll be preparing our preliminary financial models for the initial phase, creating a master development schedule, and then capturing all that in a capstone guiding document to share with the university that, if proving feasible, sets the stage for launching and execution thereafter. Again, we're in the very early stages of the process. We're elbow deep, working hard on it every day. I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John.
By virtue of a public-private partnership, would that trigger any requirements for municipal approvals, or would Stony Brook and DASNY still be the only permit issuing agency?
It would be Stony Brook and DASNY. Wouldn't be municipal approvals.
State land.
They're an important stakeholder.
On campus, that's nice.
But we also have to be mindful of sewer capacity. I'm thinking of things that on campus that touch off campus.
Does the campus sewer have capacity now, any extra capacity, or is it pretty close?
Pretty close. We've done a lot of research. We have a lot of good information that we'll be sharing with the university. It's probably nothing the university doesn't already know, but it's probably viewed through a different lens, through this lens. While there may be capacity for the initial phase of this campus village, we really need to be thinking long-term, because there clearly isn't for the full realization of the campus village.
It's on Kevin's point, it's very judicious that all of the new construction is going to be on campus, so you don't have to deal with municipal approvals.
Well, they could buy the land and not have to deal with the approvals either. So there's two ways to do it.
To incorporate it, but it's good.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about the not-for-profit, the 501c3 Providence? Is that a development company, or what kind of not?
So really, what we like to do, and in how we go about on-campus developments, is provide flexibility for our university partners, and that flexibility comes in the way of how projects can be financed. They can be financed through traditional debt and equity, through a private developer like ourselves, but we also like to bring on a 501c3 partner, in this case, Provident Resources Group. They're not a development company, they're a 501c3 whose mission is largely, not entirely, higher education. And that 501c3, as being part of the transactional team, allows the project to access tax-exempt debt and finance a project and provide many of the same benefits that a traditional university financing would provide, but being through a public-private partnership, it can be implemented in a much more expeditious manner.
Would this type of housing be eligible for low-income housing tax credits?
I don't think so. We're evaluating that, but I don't think so.
Yeah, because they're...
Interesting proposal. Thanks for presenting it to us. It's likely, the proposal, if it's implemented, to increase pedestrian traffic across Loop Road and the Long Island Railroad Station into the village. I didn't see anything on your plans to enhance student safety across that road. So could you talk about that?
I certainly can, and thank you for bringing that up. That has been a point that the community has brought to our attention. Not that we weren't aware of it, but as you can imagine, our focus has really been laser focused on the university's metrics, the demand drivers for this, and then as we look at the built environment, say, okay, now how does it touch, and does it affect, or how is it affected by the community? And the crossing of 25A is important.
Or Loop Road by itself.
Or yeah, you're right. I'm getting ahead of myself. You're right. Loop Road by itself. So what we will do, we won't solve it as part of this feasibility, but we will identify it and preliminarily vet it to sort of say, okay, here are the questions that that really need to be answered. Is saying, what are the logical crossing points, and how heavily will they be used at the outset versus a phase or two into the campus village? The community, as you'd imagine, is concerned with the 25A crossing. Right now, it's a couple of 3 different points, and the concern about safety is real. Pedestrian safety is real. We haven't solved it yet, but what we have done is we've placed it top of mind. We recognize that this can't happen with a blind eye toward how people go from the community to the campus or vice versa. That has to be solved as part of the implementation of this process.
Quite my point, yeah.
Yes, Judy?
Just to add to that, I mean, this is an ongoing conversation that we've been having with the community anyway. The town of Brookhaven and the village, I guess, of Stony Brook. I mean, people understand that there currently are some issues around crossing 25A, and there will be more of those because there's a new development happening across 25A. And so I think that there's a whole range of locals that are looking at 25A and one of the best ways to do crossings, and those conversations will continue. In fact, later today we have some of those very people coming in to get John's presentation, and we'll continue those conversations.
When do you think you're going to put it out to bid? Or when do you think you're going to have this ready to bid?
Well, right now we're going through the feasibility. So,
or will there'll be no bid, I guess?
Well, not to get ahead of ourselves, but the intent of the public-private partnership is that if proven feasible, it's an executable plan.
Right.
And we would be prepared to execute that.
Yeah. When do you think you will start executing phase 1 of the plan? What's your goal?
Well, let me say this, and please, Dr. Stanley, Dexter, Judy, Matt, I'm not speaking. What could happen? I've always said this first phase, people should be looking at it as if the flag dropped today. Like just if the university today said, let's go. I would say this first phase is a 2021, 2022 delivery. It's about 3.5 years.
2022 delivery.
From go.
Right. So
Yeah.
3 years.
Yeah.
Go.
Yeah, that 3.5 year time frame is probably, from the word go, is probably a realistic.
And again, to be clear, I mean, Gilbane and Stony Brook University are working together under an MOU where they're going to present essentially a feasibility study to say if it's feasible, and
Right.
that it would be the decision of if Gilbane believes they can do this, and Stony Brook believes it works, then we would get together to try and negotiate. If not, then we would be finished. So it just depends on
It's a nice plan.
2023, that would be completion or groundbreaking?
Oh, completion.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. If the university dropped the flag today, meaning if today we were full go,
Of phase one.
Of phase one. I think it's reasonable to expect that phase one would be delivered, today we're mid-2018. It's reasonable to say that would be mid-2021, late 2021. Everything we do, I will say this to allay any concerns that anybody in the room, everything we do would be geared toward the academic year. So everything in our higher education work, it's August, you know, so whenever the decision is to go, we would look at saying, what is the earliest start of an academic year by which the first phase or a meaningful piece of that first phase could be brought online, because the demand is so real.
The retail that would be envisioned, is it retail geared towards what the needs of the students are, or is it geared towards who the visitors to Laval Stadium and the town square and others would be from outside the community?
So initially it would be for the university community, because I think that's they're going to be most heavily using the campus village initially. As the village gets traction, as it comes online, and maybe if it's later, after the first phase is online and the second phase is being developed, I think you'll see more community awareness of and interest in the campus village. But we really see it as being service-oriented businesses. You know, in a lot of the work we do on higher education campuses, you know, it's interesting. Stores like Target have small format stores, and I say small format, like 5,000 square foot Targets or Walmarts. Amazon is creating an on-campus bricks and mortar presence for the receipt of and shipping of packages. So those packages aren't going everywhere, but they're going to these Amazon lockers, and it's really becoming a service hub. We would envision, I can envision something like a pharmacy type use, something where students can conveniently, I need to grab some aspirin or what have you. But the food is important, because the food part is what creates a sense of place. So we would think of something like not just one food offering, but there would be ranges from, you know, quick grab and go food to fast casual dining. We really would want to make use of the outdoors for those dining opportunities. So early on, it would be you'd have a mix of uses where you'd have grab and go type food, but you'd also have fast casual type dining opportunities that people could grab dinner before a game or after a game or an event or a lecture. So we would slot the specific purveyor, if you will, to really appeal most to those what those dining tastes are.
No, it sounds great. What about, do you envision any maybe office space?
Non-university.
No, just, you know, it could be for the university or for the
So
outside.
in later phases, we would anticipate university uses like student services, student support, academic services, things of that nature. I could envision, and we've had some good brainstorming of ideas, really on the FSA side, but also, you know, talking about a location that could be for like an alumni center.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it could be a compelling use for a campus village like this. If you think about this, think of a dining function. You could even aggregate the dining, the commissary that serves the campus dining here in a way of freeing up space elsewhere on campus. What we want to do is look at not just the campus village, but we want to look at what opportunities does executing the campus village present to other parts of the campus in terms of realizing the highest and best use of other parts of the campus. So if you think about a food use and you say, you know, if we could have some function space adjacent to that food use for an alumni center, for instance, that could be at that location as part of the hub of a campus village, co-located with those other uses. To me, that's a very compelling thought. So we're casting a wide net. Office in particular, we haven't considered at this location yet.
So I know you have a busy agenda, but environmental factors, green, how green will these buildings be?
In terms of their design standards?
Yes.
We would be designing to the university's LEED thresholds. Absolutely. Yes, which are Gilbane's as well.
Sounds exciting, and yeah, thanks for briefing us.
Thank you, everybody.
I think the feedback from the council is pretty positive as you guys move forward, right? Anybody else? Anybody have any concerns?
I think it's a great idea.
Good luck with it. We look forward to a briefing next year on where you're
I look forward to it as well. Thanks everybody for having me.
Okay, we have some new business to conduct. First, we have an update to the Code of Student Responsibility. We have Adam Furman here.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi.
Thank you for having me. Dexter thought he had a tough lead-in, but I've had all of these wonderful presentations. But I know all of you came here to hear about the updates to the code, so that's the main, right? No, I'm just kidding. My name is Adam Furman. I'm the director of the Office of University Community Standards. I've been here at Stony Brook a brief period of time. I started in August, so I'm just wrapping up my first academic year, but it has been a wonderful opportunity to be here at Stony Brook. To explain, for those in the room that may not know about the Office of University Community Standards, I'll just give sort of a brief introduction to what we do. Our main area of oversight is the Code of Student Responsibility, so the behavioral policies and procedures for all of our students on campus. It's a large task, but one that we like to handle with as much professionalism and care for the students as possible. And I think you'll see through some of the modifications and tweaks that we're making to the code this year, we're really focusing on student accessibility and student-centeredness in our code. Really what our office can do is handle policy violations, anything from a minor alcohol policy violation on campus through one of the topics that President Stanley was talking about, campus protests, which we've seen sort of an uprising here at Stony Brook recently. So if they become overly disruptive, that's an area where our office can step in, through to collaborating with the Office of Institutional Diversity and Equity on sexual misconduct issues on our campus. So it really runs the wide gamut. I'm going to touch a little bit first on our philosophy, on sort of how we resolve these issues. And there's really sort of 4 tenets in our resolution of these matters. At its heart, our process is educational in nature, and it's meant to be educational in nature. So in our work with students who are alleged to have violated the code, we really focus on being reflective with them, asking them questions about how they reached the decisions that they made in that moment, and helping them really see sort of the larger ramifications of those issues. Being educational in nature, talking to them about decision making, how to make good decisions. For the vast majority of our students, they are traditional age students from 18 to 22 years old. That's sort of a critical time period in life to learn those critical decision making techniques. Restorative. Was there harm done to our community in some way through a student or group of students' actions? And how can that be restored in one way or another? And then forward thinking, really working with our students to plan for what comes next. What might I do differently if I'm set up with a similar set of circumstances? How can I make good choices in the future? One of the things that we really like to focus on is the timeline in resolving these situations. Obviously, the most impactful opportunity is to try and do it within 2 weeks of the incident actually occurring. So we do aim to bring students in within a week to 2 weeks and try and come to a swift resolution of these matters. Now those are for the more minor matters. Obviously the situations that are much more complex in nature or that will need a greater degree of investigation, either in collaboration with our university police or our Office of Institutional Diversity and Equity, those will take more time, but we do aim to resolve these matters as quickly as possible, but also as effectively as possible when working with the students. So that's a little bit about our philosophy. Transitioning into the code specifically. We really focused on a couple of different things, and I highlighted them in 3 different sections for the purposes of this presentation. Obviously, these are highlights. You've all been provided with a much more detailed document as far as what the specific changes are. The first one I want to touch on is the revision of punitive and legal language. There's a lot of language in the code that touches on words such as judicial or discipline. We're trying to move away from words like that and focus more on student conduct. It's a best practice in the field to really transition out of some of that more punitive and legal language into language that really speaks to the student and talks more about the educational focus and partnership of our work with them through our student conduct process. So I highlighted a few of those here. So transitioning discipline or judicial to student conduct. Removing words like illegal and talking about unauthorized. Our document is not meant to, be the law. We obviously partner with law enforcement, but really the focus of the code is for educational purposes, so transitioning out of that type of language to more student accessible language. Getting rid of words like plea that make our process seem more like a legal process into more of a student conduct process where response would be more appropriate. Removal of some outdated terms and references. Last year there was a big transition from code of conduct to Code of Student Responsibility. That speaks to sort of some of the other things that I'm talking about. So we really did a critical read of the code this year to say, where are some of these terms? Code of conduct was still sort of interspersed throughout the document, so we're really looking to transition to make our document look more consistent and, again, more student-centered and student-friendly. So moving on to thinking about our student-centered process, and this is the area that I'm really passionate about, and I think the committee that worked on these modifications was really focused on as well. We really wanted to clarify and modify some procedures in order to make the document more easily readable by our students, easy to understand, but also really think about what is the timeline, how does the process work for our students, and how can we make sure that we are giving them every benefit and right possible throughout. So one of the things that we're most proud of, Marjorie and I really collaborated on this one, really thinking about our Title IX investigative timeline. In the current version of the code, students only have 48 hours prior to a Title IX hearing to review all of the documentation that they're expected to respond to during the hearing. We all agreed that was simply not enough time. We needed to provide our students with more information sooner so that they could fully prepare themselves for a pretty serious potential violation. So we've expanded that timeline to give students more access to all the investigative documents, including evidence, prior to their hearing so that they can be better prepared. Academic integrity. We collaborated with with members of the Provost's office and the deans of the undergraduate and graduate colleges to really look at the academic integrity section of the code, which touches on how matters of an academic nature are resolved. While my office doesn't oversee them, it's still part of our code. So the main change in that area was bringing in the College of Engineering and Applied Science under the overall undergraduate college umbrella to resolve academic integrity issues through the Academic Judiciary Committee. Sanctions. We looked at sort of the wording and the function of sanctions. One of the sanctions that I found, and I got a good laugh about this every time I would talk to someone about this, was we had a sanction listed in the code called verbal warning. Now the funny part about that is our verbal warnings were issued in writing. It kind of takes away the purpose of a verbal warning. So we modified that to informal warning, because really the purpose of that is to not be a formal part of the student's record, but to be sort of an advisory conversation with the student where we explain to them our concerns, we explain to them the purpose of the policy, and hope that it does not happen again. So we did modify some language as far as sanctions are concerned, which again are more detailed in the document. And then updating resources, making sure that our resources were proper, our website links were active and easily to use for our students. So finally, these are sort of the tougher ones to talk about because we have not as much control over them. These are sort of the regulatory considerations. And there were a number, obviously with the presidential administrative switch, there was new leadership in the Department of Education, which led to some updates to different policies and procedures that we sort of were expected to abide by. So there were some equal opportunity affirmative action updates, mainly protected classes, which was good. They were further expanded. Some updates from the Department of Education Title IX guidance. There was new guidance issued in September that we did insert into the code. Specifically, those talked about the use of mediation in resolving Title IX matters. It's now an option where previously it was not an option at all. So that was one of sort of the key ones. Also making sure in our policy we talk about that the accused student is presumed to be not responsible until the evidence proves otherwise. So we made sure to include language such as that. And then further clarification of the timeline or the time frame involved in resolving Title IX matters. And then some additional required language. There was an audit done here at Stony Brook of our Title IX policies. So in order to make sure that we're being compliant with New York Education Law 129B, there were some updates to our confidentiality policy and the university's duty to proceed in certain cases, regardless of whether or not a complainant is willing to participate moving forward. So those are some of the highlights. Obviously, there's much more in the documents that were sent to you previously, so I'm happy to respond to any questions that anyone does have.
Adam, thank you. Good presentation.
Thank you.
I understood the new opportunity for mediation, but am I reading this correctly too, that we're eliminating mandatory arbitration?
Yeah, so in the main section of the code there was a section related to arbitration. It had not been used here at Stony Brook in years, and quite frankly, they're not trained staff members to arbitrate cases out. So we have removed that from the code at the recommendation of the committee.
And is that, I know with the entire Me Too movement and, arbitration clauses have gotten a lot of bad play. Is this a regulatory requirement that we're removing this, or are we doing this because it's best practices?
It's best practice, but the arbitration piece was not a component of the Title IX policy and procedure. That was a part of our main code of conduct. So we have sort of the main student conduct process, and then we have our Title IX student conduct process, and there's some slight tweaks in each one.
And is it fair to say that, if we adopt these revisions today, our code of responsibility will be in compliance with all federal and state requirements, as well as best practices of our peer universities?
Absolutely.
Anybody else have any comments? So I'll move to approve that, seconded by Jim. Any comments, revisions, additions, suggestions? All in favor of these proposed amendments to the Code of Responsibility?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Al.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we have just two other quick things on the agenda, resolutions regarding some namings. Who's handling this? Is it Dexter or is it?
I can, thank you.
Okay.
So the first resolution is we're requesting the council to consider authorizing us to name a portion of Circle Drive. So starting from the garage to, where the underpass goes over to the health sciences in honor of Erwin P. Stoller. Everybody's familiar with the Stoller Center, and in the resolution you'll read one of the interesting things about Erwin and Freddie. They were the first ones to make their first $1 million commitment to Stony Brook in our history. I will be announcing soon, but it's not confidential, that they're going to make another $4 million commitment to the institution. The reason why we're asking for this particular strip to be designated as Erwin P. Stoller Way is because Erwin was the visionary that started the initiative that eventually materialized and manifested itself to become the Hilton Garden Inn. So we thought it would be really nice to have something there. Erwin's 96 years young, and it would be really wonderful to do this. I know this is something that would be special for him. But they've been a tremendous Stony Brook family, not Stony Brook alums, passionate about everything they do. They support everything from the music department to the Stoller Center to athletics to medicine, so fully integrated across the way. And we're not asking to remove the official naming. We're just kind of like Avenue of the Americas. We're asking to put another sign right underneath it, just in those.
So that the fire department won't complain about it. They're saying, I'm hearing my father-in-law in my head.
Motion by Father Alex, seconded by Frank. Any comments, revisions, additions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Next.
Thank you very much. And the last one is a little bit more difficult. So we lost a very close friend to Stony Brook, Peter Bajan. Peter was the vice president for student affairs, served at the institution for 24 years in, I would argue, one of the more complex jobs that now bestowed on Rit Gateau. So what you may not know about Peter is that when he came to the United States from England, one of the things that he was what he was able to do from a historic perspective was to establish USA Rugby. He also launched the program at Syracuse, where he was working on his PhD, and I haven't officially confirmed it, but we think he also launched the rugby program here at Stony Brook. We've been requested to rename the pitch, so the field that the rugby players play on over on P-Lot, in honor of Peter. The team has requested this. Other members of the campus leadership and of campus have requested that we do this. They thought this would be a fitting tribute. In addition, we're in the process of raising $100,000 to establish a scholarship in Peter's name as well. So the timeliness of this is that probably more information than you need, but if we can get this authorization, then we'll have a game between Syracuse and Stony Brook in September, and then we can dedicate the field with the council's support and approval.
Great idea. Karen, you want to make that motion for former Dean of Students repeated? Good, thanks. And seconded by Linda.
Sure.
Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. This
Dexter.
means a lot to our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dexter. Thank everybody. Does anybody else have any other business they want to raise? Hearing none. Susan's going to be sending out an email, but if you want to jot down, we're targeting for the next academic year the following 4 dates for meetings: October 1st, December 10th, February 11th, and May 6th. And Susan will confirm that in an email, this week. Here.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Just a reminder that Stony Brook University commencement will be this coming Friday at 11, May 18th. And, not this coming Friday, but a week.
I was going to say, you just scared me.
Wouldn't be bad. I've been trying to move it up. Haven't done that. Anyway, May 18th will be our commencement. That's very exciting. Again, all members of the Stony Brook Council, of course, are welcome to attend.
Great. All right. Other Susan?
Sign those resolutions before you leave. There's
Me?
two on, the two that you have
Okay.
copies.
All right. I'll do that.
So we can officially put them through.
Very good. Hearing no other business, thank you all for attending. See some of you at graduation. If not, have a great summer. Thank you.